When discussing the greatest pirate games of all time, you'll find that basically two titles dominate the conversation: 2013's Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag and 2004's Sid Meier's Pirates. When it comes to Black Flag, I am one of the many who consider it to be the best pirate simulation game of all time. I've played through it at least 3 times, and there's simply nothing like sailing the high seas while your crew sings a shanty as you hunt for treasure or legendary ships to battle against. Nothing beats the hammering of your cannon fire as you skillfully navigate the waters of the Caribbean, outmaneuvering the Navy and other pirates alike. I know other Assassin's Creed titles like Rogue and Odyssey each had their own versions of pretty serviceable ship combat. I mean, it's been in the series since Assassin's Creed 3, but for my part, nothing holds a candle to Black Flag. This is what I would say if I had played the other game I mentioned before. Sid Meier's Pirates is a weird omission from my gaming lexicon, as it not only came out at the perfect time for someone like me, I was like 9 or 10 years old and predominantly played on PC, but covered something rarely explored in gaming before or since: living the life of a pirate. Unfortunately, I was too busy playing games like Warcraft 3, Age of Empires, and Zeus, Master of Olympus at the time to look around and see what else was available. As such, I feel it's only fair for me to go back and give this game an honest try. Before we do that though, I do think it's important to briefly mention that 2 other versions of this game exist: the original of the same name, which came out in 1987, and the 1993 Pirates Gold remake. This video will cover from start to finish my first ever run of the final version, the 2004 enhanced remake, Sid Meier's Pirates. I'll share my thoughts and opinions as we go, and hopefully come to some personal conclusion on what is, for me, the best pirate game of all time. So sit back with your mates, grab a grog, and prepare your favorite shanty as we go back 21 years to one of PC gaming's most beloved titles. I'm Soul Tomato, and this is Sid Meier's Pirates. The game begins with a brief introductory cutscene detailing our family history, and rather than narrate it or cut it out, I figured I'd just leave it in full and we can go from there. The first thing we have to do is name ourselves. I decided to go with my shortened YouTube name, Soul. When playing the game for the first time, you won't be able to customize your character at all besides naming them. By that I mean you won't be able to change your default difficulty of Apprentice, your default skill, or the start date, which changes various elements of the game world depending on which one you select. You have to complete the game 1 time before these become available, as shown here. Once named, you need to join the crew of one of the nations headed to the Americas, those being the French, the Spanish, the Dutch, and the English. Now, I was confused and thought that Marquis Montalban was French at first, but it turns out he's Spanish, but I chose the English because of that. The choice is relatively arbitrary anyway, as you can work for all 4 or none of them if you like. The voyage is one fraught with peril, as your captain seems to be kind of a bad dude, and a mutiny breaks out on the ship, causing you to become its de facto captain and effectively a pirate. With loot to plunder and a family to save, we head to the Americas with our new pirate crew. Now, I'm going to pause on the screen, which is the overworld, the very first time you get to the overworld, where you'll spend the majority of your playtime sailing from location to location. I do this in order to explain what you're looking at the first time you see it, so we don't have to do it again later on. Obviously, our ship is our ship, that goes without saying. We currently have a single sloop, one of the various ship types. As you get more ships, they'll appear on the screen and they'll look different on the overworld and operate differently, with more or less speed and firepower. Ships are controlled via the mouse, arrow keys, or the number pad, which you can see on the lower right of the screen. This feature will probably be a little jarring to modern players, as games don't generally use the number pad for anything these days, but you can also just click on the buttons if you prefer. In the lower left corner, you can see our compass, which shows our fame level, currently 0. This is affected by how much loot we've acquired, quests we've finished, famous pirates we've defeated, and so on. The gold, bread icon for food and crew are fairly self-explanatory. The little face by the crew indicates how happy they are. If this goes down far enough, they will mutiny, which usually just results in them taking one of the ships that you have and some of your money with them. It can also result in you being stranded if you don't have any extra ships, though this never happened in my run. Lastly, we can see the wind direction in knots, which is currently blowing west but naturally changes. And finally, the date, which is January 1st, 1660. The date does matter in game as your character will age as your adventure progresses, so think of it as sort of a soft timer on your run, although I was able to do everything I wanted well before that would have been an issue. The first town we arrive in is Antigua, a prosperous English trading port. Now, I was surprised to see how this hub screen was laid out considering this game's age, but players of the Mount & Blade series will be familiar with how towns and villages operate within the game. Basically, you have these options with various purposes. The governor is where you go to find out who your faction is at war with, advance in your faction rank, get the occasional quest, and also meet the governor's daughter for a potential romance side quest. We'll get to that later. The status screen is essentially a brief overview of your current inventory and statuses. It's easy to see why this game was loved by kids, as most menus are pretty self-explanatory like this. There's various other options on the bottom of the screen as well. In order after status, they are fleet status, or what kind of ships you have, if they need to be repaired, how much they're worth if you sell them, and what their upgrades are. Your personal status screen is your progress in the story in game. Your captain's log is sort of a journal that I admittedly never looked at after this, although interestingly, these details also get written on the in-game map when you zoom in throughout your run in areas that you've performed certain things, which is pretty cool. The treasure map is where you'll get famous pirate treasures to the locations of one of your 4 missing family members. The main map, which is actually a lot bigger than I expected it to be, covers the literal entirety of the Caribbean from the Florida Keys to the top of South America. The top 10 pirates of the world, various individuals you can fight and defeat to take their personal ships and their place on the bracket, although you can be higher than them without killing them as well. The Piratepedia, which is exactly what it sounds like. The systems options, which you can also access on the main menu screen. And finally, the disc, which you can't access in town, but allows you to save and reload. Back to the main hub, the tavern is where players can learn rumors from the barmaid about certain ships or even your family members. You can buy special items from the mysterious traveler in the back, recruit pirates for your crew being helpful for everything from ship duels to loading cannons faster and manning other ships you can collect on your journey. And lastly, you can talk to the barkeep, who will generally give you information about the world, like where to get ship upgrades or the beauty of the town governor's daughter. Next, we have the merchants, where you can buy food and then sell various loot you've taken from enemies. It's pretty limited, to be honest. I didn't use it a whole lot, but it's good for selling some stuff that you don't want. I made sure to grab a 6-month supply of food before going to the shipmaster, who currently has an offer for the triple hammock upgrade, which simply lets you have more crew. I don't really need that right now, but ships have various upgrades like this, which give bonuses to everything from damage to mobility. All right, let's take a breath. I know that was a lot. I didn't want to necessarily dump everything on you at once, but with the base knowledge of all of that, we can now proceed much smoother through the video. Since this is my first time in the world, I decided to try and get into my first ship battle as soon as possible, just to get a feel for it. Weirdly enough, players of Black Flag will recognize the basic principles of ship combat, as they are, although simpler, largely the same. You have various types of shot, from round, which is used for disabling cannons, grape for crew, and I believe chain for disabling the ship's speed and also killing some crew. You also have to pay attention to wind direction for speed and mobility. The ship combat ended up being my favorite part of the game, although on harder difficulties it seemed like enemy ships typically just made a beeline for me to enter the boarding minigame, but regardless, it's still a lot of fun. I also found it incredibly impressive that the battle map for each of these ship battles is literally just wherever you happen to be on the main map, like the overworld map. It isn't some rendered area for fighting, it's just the exact spot on that overworld, which is really, really cool. The boarding process goes both ways. As the player, you can use your ship to engage in the sword duel or the boarding minigame if, for example, you have a small ship or are losing against a tough opponent. I did this a few times. Sword fighting is controlled via the number pad, but to be honest, I never got particularly good at this. I got okay, but never like amazing. You have 3 attack types and 3 defense responses for each, as well as a taunt. Nothing too complex, but on higher difficulties, which I'll explain how to unlock later, it can be pretty challenging. At its core though, you just have to win, i.e. get enough touches or strikes on your opponent before you run out of crew. If they run out of crew before you, however, then you'll win. Once you win, you'll occasionally get more crew or special crew members who will act as upgrades to your ship. You will also get some plunder and the option to both loot the enemy vessel as well as keep or sink it to add to your fleet. This basically just gives you more ships to potentially fight with and allows you to carry more tons of loot and crew. Back in Antigua, I sold our first battle spoils for some more hard-earned gold before spending some time fighting French sloops for experience and to just get used to the ship controls. After a few of these, I got notified that an English governor and a Dutch governor were both interested in giving me a promotion. I went to Nevis, where the English governor was first, grabbing some more crew and a map showing where we could find the famed pirate Bart Roberts' treasure. Very exciting. On higher difficulties, these not only cost more, but only give you a portion of the map. For this, however, in Apprentice, we get the entire map, and we can see that the treasure is southeast of Guadalupe and near the Shark Head landmark. Meeting with the governor, he commends us for our recent capture of the French sloops and promotes us to the rank of captain, the first of 8 ranks within each faction. We're also introduced to the governor's attractive daughter, but can only dance with her at rank 3 or colonel. For beautiful daughters, which is obviously our goal, you need to be rank 5 or baron. Before departing, I decided to sell one of my sloops for some extra gold before heading to St. Martin. Players can also now see my pirate map in the top left quest tab of the screen. This area fills with various other elements throughout the game depending on what quest you're currently tracking. In St. Martin, I met with their governor who gave me a letter of marque, which the English also did, but I forgot to mention it at the time. This basically allows us to sink enemy ships in their name. With the gold we've acquired so far, I upgrade my main ship with cotton sails and pay the mysterious traveler 1,000 gold for news about my sister. It seems another evil Spaniard, Baron Raimondo, has information about her and we should track him down to get it. This constitutes the bulk of the main quest of Pirates, where you track down Raimondo repeatedly for information about your 4 family members, which is given via map pieces. Now, personally, I found it to be pretty tedious after a while, but not enough to cause me to get overly frustrated or anything. It serves its purpose. After achieving the rank of captain with the Dutch and meeting our first beautiful daughter at St. Martin, I decided it was time to find our first buried treasure. The way treasures work is, as a player, you have to find the landmark shown on the map and land near it. Then you'll be taken to an overview of sorts of the area and its various other landmarks like this totem. By following the map and looking for these landmarks, you will eventually find the treasure, family member, or hidden city that you're looking for. Treasure and other locations are only generated when given to the player, meaning their locations will change per run whenever you're given the map, which does add a lot of replayability. Nearby, I noticed a Jesuit mission and wanted to see exactly what that was. Basically, these are special settlements with the option to transport immigrants to various locations on the map to improve their prosperity. You can also trade with the abbot of these missions for whatever meager supplies they may have. In the settlement of Leeds, I found our next map of Rock Brasiliano's treasure, also near Guadalupe. You'd think people would move these things around. In nearby Barbados, I learned that Baron Raimondo sails in a Spanish war galleon named the Magdalene. We are also given his last known location, which is unfortunately on the other side of the Caribbean. Rock Brasiliano's treasure is worth 4,000 gold, and with a complete map is as easy to find as the first. Since I'm now getting more flush with cash, I make sure to start buying some of the various special items from the mysterious traveler, like the calfskin boots, which make the ballroom dancing minigame just a little bit easier. I am also informed in Leroy that we are now the 9th most notorious pirate in the Caribbean. Go us! I spent about the next half hour or so fighting pirates, getting promoted to major with the English, and finding Jean Lafitte's treasure worth 7,000 gold. I haven't mentioned it yet, but if the player runs into one of these pirates after stealing their treasure, they will be attacked by the pirate if they happen to come across them, which I think is a cool mechanic. There are also pirate hunters who will do the same thing, but they never really come up in this run. After grabbing the special item, the fiddle, I decided it may be a good time to finally track down Baron Raimondo just to see what that's like, even though I only have a sloop ship, which is generally not the best in wide open seas. I'm not sure if this is only on lower difficulties, but for me at this stage, the game asked once I was far enough underway if I'd like a heading on where to go, but I believe this is only, again, on like Apprentice and the difficulty above that. I didn't notice this later on. It could also be dependent on your ship size, I'm not sure. If it also wasn't obvious, you can switch to the over ship view while traversing, but I found it more cumbersome than enjoyable in the closer view. In Curacao, the Dutch promoted me to major, and I learned from the barman that Baron Raimondo is heading for Santa Catalina, which is blessedly still on this side of the Caribbean. There's nothing worse than traveling all the way to, say, the Yucatan coast, only to find that you have to turn back around because you were too slow. It has also officially been 1 in-game year since we began our journey. It's also important to note that our time at sea without dividing our plunder, which we'll go over later, also impacts your crew's morale. For now, though, I continued attacking various ships in search of Raimondo. Largely Spanish ones too, because once I learned the Marquis was Spanish as well as Raimondo, I attacked them basically mercilessly for the remainder of my run. I also found yet another map and was given the location of our first famous pirate, Captain Bart Roberts, whose treasure, as you may recall, we graciously confiscated, so he is unlikely to be our biggest fan. Just outside of this port, I also fought my first war galleon, which was honestly kind of frightening. I know this is the easiest difficulty, but having to zip and dodge a 20+ gun warship is as stressful as it is fun. Almost immediately after that, I ran into Bart Roberts, who is one of the weaker famous pirates as he only sails a sloop of war called Cassandra. His ship and crew surrendered without even having to fight him in a duel, but we do get a cook for our crew as a reward and 1,700 gold. Lucky for us, our next famous pirate, Captain Rock Brasiliano, is just around the corner. He pilots a royal sloop, and we actually get to see his in-game model in a duel, though I defeat him easily enough. We take a quartermaster from his ship and 2,900 gold before marking him off our list as well. For those keeping score so far, we are 19 years old, we have been at sea for 15 months, have looted over 20,000 gold, have defeated 2 famous pirates, found 3 famous treasures, and have acquired 4 of the game's various special items. We also have quite the little fleet of ships behind us, although to be fair, I don't have nearly enough crew for this many, but it's fun to look at. When visiting places like the English settlement of Newton, you will occasionally have the option to escort new governors to a certain port to increase its prosperity. In the tavern, I learned that Raimondo is near Santo Domingo, and 4th ranked pirate Jean Lafitte near Port Royal, so it seems we have plenty to do on this side of the Caribbean Caribbean for now. I escort the new governor of Nassau first, sinking a few Spaniards along the way for trying to stop me before being given the rank of colonel by the governor we just escorted. After collecting a new spyglass, I set my sights on Lafitte, whose treasure we have also already found. I also decided to sink a few trade galleons for good measure before finally trying to figure out what the divide plunder mechanic was. I looked up that it's good to do this every once in a while if your crew becomes too mutinous, which mine is now. Divide plunder is essentially a soft reset of yourself, giving up all your loot and ships, excluding your flagship, for a chance to advance the difficulty of the game, which range from Apprentice, where we are now, and will remain for now, to Swashbuckler, the hardest difficulty. These affect everything from how many map pieces you get from the traveling merchant guy to how difficult the various minigames are. Once you divide the plunder, the game will advance a few months before allowing you to proceed. Amazingly, Jean Lafitte is still in the area even after our time away, so I decided to deal with him immediately. And 6,800 gold later, the fourth best pirate of the Caribbean is no more. I also find a nice set of balanced swords in his former hideout, which basically allow you to switch between different sword types in duels that have different attributes for each. Baron Raimondo is unfortunately on the other side of the ocean, but I think we've waited long enough to confront him, so I track him to just outside Santa Marta in early 1662. Raimondo is a unique case where even if you disable his ship, as I did here, you still have to duel him for information about your family. Likewise, he has a unique surrender animation, unlike the other pirates we've faced already, who invariably get thrown into the ocean. Unfortunately for my sister, the map piece I get is only 1/4 of the whole map and doesn't offer enough to go on to find her. We will have to track down Raimondo again for more pieces. Like I said before, this mechanic is pretty tedious, as there are usually 2 to 4 map pieces in total for your 4 family members, meaning that you can potentially have up to, 10 to 16 pieces that you need to find. This was probably my least favorite part about the game, honestly, as logically, why would I ever let this man go if he knows the location of all my family members? I would just get him to lead me to each of my family members, and then I would throw him in the ocean. Sadly, I can't do that, so we have to move on. Our next pirate target is Captain Stede Bonnet, who some may remember from the great comedy show Our Flag Means Death. Since I now have Raimondo's old galleon, I typically get boarded by most enemies because they'd rather risk the duel. Still, Stede offers no challenge, and another 4th ranked pirate is no more. At this point, our Captain Soul is 21 years old and the 5th ranked pirate in the world. Our current flagship, the Magdalene, is also fully upgraded, which doesn't hurt. Much of my next hour in game turned into this basic loop of finding various famed pirates and eliminating them, with Captain Jack Rackham and Captain Kidd being our next 2 victims. We also visited our first Indian village, their words not mine, which as far as I can tell, the only thing you can do here is trade or tell the chieftain where they can do a raid against a faction you don't like. You can also do this with pirate captains at pirate hideouts, but I never did. I then spent some time just sailing around talking to various people in taverns, and in Port Royal, where we defeated Jean Lafitte roughly a year ago, I was promoted to Admiral, or rank 5. Then, spoilers, I met our future wife, the redheaded governor of Port Royal's daughter, who I'll call Rowan after the character in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. She promises to dance with us if we reach rank 6 or Baron, thus beginning our romance subplot. I make sure to buy a necklace to eventually give her that I find in Santiago. I'm also currently on the hunt for Captain Kidd's treasure and buy a weather glass at a nearby port to help prevent damage to our ship when passing through storm clouds on the map. With Captain Kidd's treasure of 8,000 gold found and Raimondo fortuitously outside of a port I just happened to be stopping at, we get the second map piece for our sister, which turns out to be the whole thing. It puts her near Maracaibo. But my crew has grown restless again, so I opt to divide our plunder once more, which this time allows us to advance the game difficulty from Apprentice to Journeyman. This not only visually changes our character in this section, as various items and ranks do, but also gives us just a bit more loot when we go to divide it, which is basically the incentive for playing on the higher difficulties, besides, I guess, personal accomplishment. In November of 1664, I arrived at Lookout Reef, and after trudging through the jungle for a bit, located my sister in this shed, which serves as your family member's treasure chest of sorts. With our sister rescued, we learn more of the Marquis Montalban, who sails in the Spanish galleon Adelante near the city of Cartagena, which just so happens to be nearby. Now, from this point on in the video, I'm going to jump around a little bit more. This entire playthrough took me something like maybe 10 hours. It's a short game, and we've covered maybe the first 3.5. There's still a lot to see, and I don't want to get bogged down in the minutia, so I'll make sure to date and put into context every now and then what's going on, just to keep you on track. In February 1665, outside the Spanish port of Santiago, I finally ran into our arch-enemy Marquis Montalban aboard his 40-gun Spanish flag galleon Adelante. This fight, both on ship and afoot, was actually pretty challenging. I think this was the only time I had to reload a ship battle the entire game because I was sank. The next time I opted to just duel him outright, and if you recall, since we bought those balanced swords a while ago, we have the option to select between a longsword, a rapier, and a cutlass for each duel from now on. For my part, I generally stuck with the rapier for faster attacks. Now, as much as I don't like the guy, no one can deny that the Marquis is dripped to the gills. The dude looks cool as hell. He also beat me in our first duel, the first time anyone had done so, but not the only time that this happened in this run. After a quick reload, since I didn't want to lose my flagship by losing the duel, I managed to throw him into the sea. Not to his death, mind you. He will show up again later in this video. But with his defeat, his hideout spawns because we get a map piece for it. We also acquire a navigator from his crew, 5,000 gold, and his old ship Atalante. I continued on my run for treasure and trouble, attacking the Spanish basically whenever I came across them, which in the Central and South American regions is basically everywhere. After a year and a half of that, I decided to try and up the difficulty again just to see what was different, so I divided my plunder and advanced to adventurer difficulty. And I don't know if this is true or if it's just a coincidence, but it did seem like I was getting more advanced maps and locations since after I did this, I finally got information on Blackbeard's treasure. I also tested out the sneak into a city mechanic, which is basically just a minigame where you go into an enemy town to try to get to a certain building. Unfortunately for me, I was caught immediately outside the tavern and spent a few months in jail. I took it out on this rude captain I found bothering a barmaid in a French port. You'll also notice my cuirass, which is a special item you can get and makes duels a little bit easier. Looks very cool. In June 1667, I decided to finally try out the attack town mechanic as I had about the same amount of soldiers as this Spanish post. This puts players into a land battle where they have 3 types of units: a powerful ranged and melee officer unit, which includes you, I assume, a melee focused pirate unit, and a ranged focused buccaneer unit. Each of these units has 2 potential actions or movements per turn unless they go into tree cover, which provides half damage but automatically ends their turn. Even if the system is fairly rudimentary, I still found it pretty fun. There's flanking, extra points for morale on the high ground, and overall it was a good time whenever it happened, which I think is benefited by the fact that I could maybe name a handful of times that I did it, so that does help. Once a town's defenses are defeated, depending on what type it is, you loot it and potentially turn it over to a faction of your choosing, but these need to be bigger areas like towns or capitals, as demonstrated by my taking of Rio de la Hacha from the Spanish for the English in September 1667. In March 1668, I decided to sell off my fleet and advance my difficulty again, this time to Rogue, or the second highest, which is what I finished the game at, although I did try the highest difficulty Swashbuckler for a little bit, but was finding it a bit more challenging than I cared for, especially when it came to sword fighting. In January 1670, or 10 years since the game started, I finally faced off against Blackbeard. I was happy to see that he had his famous burning beard, which is included in the cutscene and character model. Really awesome. You'll also notice our protagonist, now 28, is definitely looking older and more mature in the face, which is a really cool feature. With Blackbeard's defeat, I am now the most famous pirate in the world, and I think it's time we finally return to Port Royal for that dance we were promised. As you can see, our rank reflects onto our clothing, and as an admiral, we get this quite dapper little hat for the ballroom dancing minigame, which is, to put it nicely, fine. It's made easier by special items like the boots we got forever ago and some slippers we also acquired, and the first time you do it you'll get indicators on the bottom right of the screen showing you which way to go. However, on subsequent dances you'll have to read the hand direction of your partner and follow along that way. There are 8 directions in total and I believe around 4 dance patterns in the game, so it's not that difficult. The goal is to obviously follow along and to get the heart at the top of the screen to its maximum size before the song ends. If you succeed, the dance will be considered a success. You'll be able to progress your romance, and you'll get information from the daughter you danced with. In our case, since we haven't found all of our family members yet, the information we receive is about Raimondo. But if you have found them, then the daughters will give you map pieces for one of the lost cities, which will be a feature later on in this video, don't worry. Now, rather interestingly, for my run anyway, after defeating Raimondo the most recent time, I felt I had enough of the map pieces with me to try to find my uncle without tracking him down for the 4th and final time that I would have needed for all the pieces. That was a mouthful, but you get what I mean. I was correct in this, but also got incredibly lucky as our arch enemy Marquis Montalban's fortified hideout just so happened to be in the path of my uncle's cabin when I went to go look for it, meaning I got to knock out both of these at the same time. For the Marquis Fortress, you first have to win a battle, such as if you were raiding a settlement, and then defeat him in a duel. I'm told that on the highest setting, this is quite a task as he's basically mirror perfect if fighting the player. With his defeat, we are awarded 100,000 gold, which is insane, 8 new specialists for our crew, and Montalban as our personal cabin steward. We have officially defeated our arch-nemesis and avenged our family's shame. Well done. I grabbed my uncle shortly after, who gives us a map piece for the lost city of the Incas, which is also really cool. Since we are positively flush with cash, there's not really a reason for us to divide our loot, as it's just enough to keep our crew from getting mutinous, even on this difficulty. Also, I didn't mention it, I've been using the Queen Anne's Revenge as my flagship for some time now, which you get from Captain Henry Morgan and not Blackbeard, oddly enough. I also made sure to periodically return to Port Royal to advance our romance questline, giving our prospective wife that diamond necklace we bought years ago as a token of our love. Very sweet. In April 1673, I rescued my aunt with basically a fragmented map, which I was quite proud of. The spyglass on the overworld is also incredibly handy for this, just an FYI. My aunt gave me the second map piece for the lost city of the Incas, and now we only have one family member left to rescue. In September of the same year, I also grabbed the final treasure, completing yet another task on my long to-do list. Our next romance task, after a while, was to duel our would-be paramour's jealous fiance. Poor guy. I love the courtyard backdrop for this fight, and I have to give this guy props. He was no slouch. I had to reload this a couple times to beat him. After his defeat, Rowan once again gives us the whereabouts to Raymondo, who has information on our grandfather. We know how this goes. I actually found Raymondo inside of a city one time, and it's interesting that the barkeep will let you fight him in his bar. Honestly, for a game this old and on the surface pretty simple, there's a ton of variety to it. The next time we see Rowan, January 1674, we have to complete yet another dance, and this time without the blinking prompts. As I said before, the special shoes and boots do help, but this took me a few reloads to complete as I had a terrible time telling if her wrist movement meant a left, a right, forward or back, or a spin. I just had trouble reading it. It could be because the screen was small, or maybe I just need glasses, who knows. Still, we got there in the end. After that, in March 1675, again after doing some pirate stuff, Rowan was kidnapped by yet another dirty Spaniard, Colonel Mendoza. These guys just love being bad. We are to rescue her for our chance to finish our romance. First, however, I rescued my grandfather, who I found in late April 1675, and who gave me the last piece I realistically needed to find the lost city of the Incas. At this point, we have successfully completed what is considered the main story for the game. We've defeated the Marquis and rescued all of our family members. But for my part, there's still two things left to do: save my future wife and find this lost city. With context clues of the map, I gleaned that Captain in the upper corner of the map, or this word that looks like Captain, had to be Captain's Rock. And by using the spyglass while wandering around there, we found the lost city of the Incas, whose cutscene is probably my favorite in the game. We are awarded 50,000 gold and a pretty fantastic view, I must say. Taking stock of our adventure on the personal screen, you can see how much we've completed throughout our run. I am the opposite of a completionist in most games, but I have to give pirates credit. It's a lot of fun and hard to stop when you find a new task to do. I finally tracked down Colonel Mendoza almost a year to Rowan's kidnapping. In April 1676, saved, she offers us her hand in marriage, although we have to take her home to her father first to ask him if we can. A formality at this point considering what we just did, but I'll do my part. As we sail back to Port Royal, I can't help but reflect on the journey we've undertaken, and the question I posed at the beginning of this video. Is this really the best pirate game of all time? I think the answer has to be yes. While I admit I enjoyed something like Black Flag more for its modern take on these pirate elements, or Mountain Blade for what it did with this hub system, Pirates is literally the blueprint these games exist on the back of. This isn't to say iteration of an idea can't be better than its inspiration, but something about Pirates still feels fresh all these years later. It feels unique, new, and exciting. Every time I set sail from a port, I wasn't quite sure what I'd do or what would happen, and I loved it. And as this journey comes to a close with our marriage to Rowan, I do sincerely recommend this game to anyone with even an inkling of interest in the pirate or adventure genre. There's a reason people love it so much, and I can see that now. This game is only about $10 on Steam, so a bargain really for how much you could replay it. While there is technically more I could do in this run, I decided to retire my character after this marriage, as it felt like a fitting conclusion to Captain Soul's story. Once you retire, players are given a concluding end screen detailing their age and accolades. These also accumulate in a final fate for your character, with the lowest being Pickpocket and the highest Governor. I was tempted to continue on until I got Governor, but I think Bishop is pretty good for our first ever playthrough. I'll save Governor for my own time. And that, my friends, is going to be it for this one. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video and our adventure in the 17th century Caribbean as much as I did. I highly encourage anyone watching this who somehow hasn't played this game yet like me to go back and give it a try. You won't regret it. But as always, I'm Soul, and I will happily see you in the next one.